What FDA does is they post a listing in the Federal Register of materials that are permissible for use in belting that can come into contact with food directly. And as long as the manufacturers certify that everything they have put into a product falls under those guidelines or was within that list, they can give you a written certification that they comply with FDA requirements.
Approval?
Compliance.
Compliance.
Okay.
So, if you need something like that, and more people are asking for this, one of the things we're seeing as a manufacturer is people like yourself coming back to us because you've got a user account someplace or a food plant someplace that says, I want to make sure that we're in compliance with FDA. Can you give me certification? And a manufacturer should be able to give you a written letter on their letterhead stating that they comply with FDA.
The listing is a group of materials that are not known carcinogens.
Correct.
That the material is made up of material, or the belt is made up of materials that are not known carcinogens, and that listing is there, and that's the key thing. Some of our manufacturers are shipping product to Europe or to Canada, and they're pretty sticky, especially in Europe, over approvals.
Standards can be higher, depending.
Yes. So it's critical that you know what your customer's doing.
And you see, it's even confusing to the people that deal with it all the time and all that. I don't even want to mention EPA and all of this, but it's we kind of football this stuff around a little bit so you can see FDA, when you need FDA, when you need USDA. USDA is for that meat, dairy products, raw things. And again, most manufacturers will list that in their data sheets. It's pretty easy to find. If you need the letters of compliance and things like that, you have to contact them more than likely to get a letter sent to you, but that's typically done. So
It is really up to the manufacturer to provide that certification, and you must always rely on them and make sure that you have that in your purchasing files or whatever to back you up. So, but don't try to do it on your own.
And don't put it on your letterhead, leave it on the manufacturer's letterhead.
You do it on emails, do it as attachments, PDFs.
Yes.
Do things as PDFs, because otherwise you can get, if you do a Word, you could modify it. You don't want to do that.
No.
Stay with PDFs.
Liability for this stuff needs to rest with the manufacturer,
Right.
not with the distributor. Now, a couple other things up here you'll run into. Hasit. This was a system that was put into place some years ago when USDA said we're not going to have approval processes going through our systems anymore. We're going to put these Hasit things and force the issue down to the plant level. So now what they did is they had to put this system in place. What it was a series of binders that detailed all of the sanitation and cleaning procedures that were in place, who was going to do it, when it was going to be done, and everything else, so that they could go back when there was a problem and pinpoint where the problem was so that they could do corrective action. Okay? Now what happened is you saw a bunch of recalls over a period of time because while they put these things in place, they had some problems. That's when NSF got on board and they went back to the approval process. Some of these are still in place out there. So when a guy comes in and he says, I need something that will meet my Hasit requirements, this is what he's talking about. It's nothing out of the ordinary or strange or different. There's one manufacturer that's running around right now saying, I've got Hasit belts. Well, yeah, so do we. We just don't call them that because they're FDA certified. Okay, no big deal. Eurofood approval. There are new standards in Europe as of last year. They are more stringent than FDA. And the reason it becomes critical for you is because if you're dealing with companies that are manufacturing equipment that is going to Europe, it's not good enough that it just meets FDA certification or USDA. It also has to meet the Euro standards.
it could be coming in from Europe as well, and they could be asking you for a belt that meets that approval here, just because it is on there coming from Europe. But
And then the same thing holds true for Canada. Now, one of the things we've seen here lately, and there's a lot of things changing very rapidly right now, is not only is the equipment, but if we're manufacturing in a food plant down here a product that's going to end up in Canada, I don't care if it's a box of cookies, crackers, whatever it happens to be, they can be inspected by somebody from the Canadian Food Authority, who can then ask to see, does your belt meet the Canadian standards for food contact? So it's all the way down into the user level now. Okay, so those are some of the things that are going on out there. And you thought covers was difficult.
for some reason, when the federal government gets into the mix, things become a little more complicated. I don't know what that is, but just a little more complicated.
And if we don't have enough standards, here's another one that's out here now. This one has started in Europe. It's been running in Europe for some time. It's starting to creep in over here. It's called ATEX. Now, we don't get it so much in a lightweight. You'll see it more in a medium weight. You see it definitely in a heavy duty belt. And what this is a standard for approval of belting used in potentially explosive environments. For us, that could be flour mills or any place similar to that where there's a lot of dust in the air
Munition plants.
and the possibility of explosions is high.